All right, welcome to Beyond Baseball, episode number 5. I am Jared Perkins. I'm here as always with Dr. Caleb Mezzi. Caleb, how are you doing today?
I am good. As you can see, I have my Eagles hat on, but I know we're going to talk about baseball.
Love it. Yeah, it's football season somehow in the fall, but I don't know
And,
how we got
and
here.
somehow the Eagles are 5-0 going into a possible 6-0 this weekend.
Gotta love it. But yeah, no, but we're also in playoff season, which is kind of shocking. Do you have a favorite team that's kind of in the playoffs right now?
Yeah, I think it's obvious. My hometown Phillies,
Yeah.
so I'm pulling for. Definitely didn't feel that they would have gotten this far if you would have asked me a month ago, just because of how their September looked. But our October has been good so far, and looking forward to seeing how they do against the Braves.
Yeah, they've been looking pretty good. By the time most of you hear this, they'll probably be in the ALCS and NLCS. So we're in the division series right now while we're recording. I think my favorite team, not talent wise, is the Seattle Mariners. Just exciting to see them out there. The team that they've kind of put together with Robbie Ray, Julio Rodriguez, and a few others. It's just fun to watch them play. I think they're going to get smoked by the Astros. They're already down 2-0. So it's just like one of those things. The Astros are just good. And I think that's my favorite complete talent team is the Houston Astros. I think up and down that roster, they're just loaded. You got Jordan Alvarez, who's just an absolute stud, and you got that rotation led by Justin Verlander that's just dominant. And it's dominant with guys like Jose Urquidy, Framber Valdez, and all those kind of things. And they got a stacked bullpen. So I think that's definitely my favorite team.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's funny because I look at the NL because I'm the Phillies fan, but
Mm-hmm.
if I had to pick the AL team that I think looks like the Phillies in terms of like excitement and young guys, I look at the Mariners. So like
Yeah.
exactly what you were saying. Not they're not the same. Like I don't think the Mariners have a Bryce Harper for example, but the Phillies don't have a Julio Rodriguez. So like when you talk about that stuff, but I think the young, exciting part that they could go on a run. I think both those teams, Phillies and the Mariners, are built for a future, whether it's this year or next. Um, but the other thing to look at is I don't remember the last time we've had this, but to me, you look at the NL and the AL, and there's two dominant teams, and it's the
Yeah.
Dodgers and the Astros. So it's chalk to say that it's the cake, to just be like those are the two teams. But those are the two teams that I had when I did my brackets, and
Mm-hmm.
similar to what you're saying, I think the Astros are just that good. I think the other thing that comes with experience, the Astros and the Dodgers have been there. We all
Yeah.
know, and it would be really cool to see a matchup like 2017, just Sans Astros. I think would be the cool thing to see
And the Dodgers want their revenge after the cheating scandal. So,
for sure, rightfully so.
speaking of the Houston Astros, we did our guest that we have on this week was Adam Whitt, who pitched for the Houston Astros for about 2 or 3 years. He's an amazing human being with an incredible story. I know Adam from my days at the University of Nevada, Reno, where he was a walk-on to the University of Nevada, throwing like low 80s, and then all of a sudden switched to sidearms, started pumping low 90s, and wound up getting himself drafted. Caleb, what stood out to you in that interview?
So there's a couple of things. One is super positive, super optimistic human being. Not that he was the most, but he was definitely up there in terms of who we've
Yeah,
ever talked to. He had a crazy path, crazy road. I mean, we talked about him getting released and then finding out, that he had a rare, I'll just say a rare disease. I don't want to give away too much
yeah,
details, but and just his mentality going through everything in the span of like a year and then coming out on top because that's where he is now. It's just beautiful to hear and to see a human like that look so healthy after going through all that stuff. The other thing was one of the things I loved was how he was able to draw parallels between pitching and golf because I always ask people
yeah.
that question. And it is funny that we're talking about the playoffs and then we're talking about a guy who played baseball and is golfing because the teams who are no longer playing baseball in the postseason are likely golfing. But just hearing his story, seeing him as like a man coming into his own, kind of having thoughts of like maybe I should have did this from the beginning, but this is really where I'm supposed to be right now. It's just so refreshing to hear from an athlete who has found success off the diamond.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that was incredible too is he's going through so many transitions at once. And then on top of that, he also decided to start a foundation in order to give back and give everything that he had left outside of going through that transition, going through the battles that he was going. He's got a limited bandwidth, and he decided to start something where he was giving back to the community that gave him so much growing up. So I think that was just an awesome thing to see. But we don't want to keep you from that interview. So without further ado, our interview with Adam Whitt. We are here with another awesome guest for Beyond Baseball, the podcast that's just bringing you a little bit of insights to the human side of the game. We have Adam Whitt, who pitched with the Houston Astros, played for a little bit at the University of Nevada, Reno as well. Adam, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we are excited to have you on. Your story is incredible, but we want you to kind of touch on that and dive deep into your story, into college baseball, how you made it to the pros, and how you've transitioned to a career now after baseball.
Yeah, I mean, kind of like most people, baseball was my first love growing up, playing little league, high school baseball, that type of stuff. I ended up walking on to the University of Nevada, Reno in 2012, played there until 2015. And college was kind of the years where I learned a lot about, teamwork, leadership, seeing the results that you put in from working hard on the field, caring for your teammates, doing all that type of stuff, and seeing the outcomes of a winning team. We won the Mountain West Championship. We had a lot of good players, a lot of people drafted from that team. So college was kind of that first experience of, what a real team environment was like, and kind of got me that even more involved into more than just the love of baseball, but that whole teamwork side of it. Drafted in 2015, played for the Houston Astros for a couple of seasons, and ended up getting released in the beginning of the 2017 season. And that is kind of when the real world hits you. I mean, just like most people, you never think your playing days are going to end, and you don't really think about what you're going to do afterwards. And so that was a tough transition for me. I mean, you get released, and my whole identity was wrapped up in Adam Whitt, the baseball player. What were my stats? How good was I doing? How hard was I throwing? All that type of stuff. And all of a sudden, it all gets stripped away and taken away from you. And now you're out in the real world, no plan really. I mean, I had my college degree even, and I still was kind of floating in space, not really motivated or knowing what to do. And so I got a little part-time job at a tennis facility, managing and working at the tennis facility, kind of learning how to run another team in a different form. I had 5 or 6 employees. And a couple months after that, that's when my life took an even bigger change and kind of made me realize even more so, who I really was as a person rather than just a baseball player. I got diagnosed with chronic myeloid leukemia in April of 2018. And, you get a diagnosis of cancer. And like I said, that's something that it puts everything into perspective real quick. You go from worrying about, how did I pitch yesterday? How did I do? All this stuff that was all consuming at the time. And it starts to put a real feeling of how insignificant that is in my life. When all of a sudden I'm worried about living to the next day or living to the next week. And it comes down to that foundation of life and living and health. It kind of put it into even more perspective for me from there. Then we went to treatments, did chemo, did that for the first few months, a little bit more intensive stuff. And I started to have some good responses to that. So they knocked it down to a little bit lower dosage of a oral chemotherapy that I still take today. And it's been 4 years, just a little bit over 4 years. So I'm still taking it every day. I still have side effects and stuff like that from it, but it's not enough to keep me from going out and living my life and doing things. Just kind of have to manage my time, a little bit of nausea medication and stuff like that a little bit better. But the diagnosis of cancer, when you first get sick, and I went from 212 pounds down to about 172 in just a couple weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, just because you can't eat and you're losing weight, can't work out. And my whole life being an athlete, I needed to do something. I needed to be outside. I needed to do something. And that's kind of when I really got involved with golf. Was I can ride in a golf cart, I can get out, swing a club, and ride up to the next shot. I don't have to walk. I don't have to physically exert myself quite as much as what I did with baseball. And So I just kind of started from there. I'd go out and play, you know, 1 or 2 holes with my wife riding in the cart. And then I started to get a little stronger, and I started to play 5 or 6. And then I started to play 9. And then I started to play 18. And then I started to learn all the rules about it. And I started diving in a little deeper into how the golf swing works, and watching videos and taking lessons and learning from local PGA pros here in Salt Lake, where I'm living now. And just kind of like my personality with baseball, I kind of just kept diving deeper and deeper into it. And it all started just from, like I said, it was physically one of the only things that I could do, being outside. And I just kind of kept diving into it. And eventually, after I think it was about 3 years, 2.5, 3 years, I started playing in tournaments, started playing in amateur tournaments around the state. And I started doing really well too. I was beating some Division I college players at the University of Utah and BYU, and some other really good players who used to be professionals that turned back to amateurs. And that's when I kind of thought to myself, you know, why not give it a try, and let's try to turn pro and get my PGA card to start teaching during the week. So that's what I'm doing. I joined the PGA, and I teach lessons during the week at a golf course here in Salt Lake. And on the weekends, I travel around the West Coast and play in little mini tour events and try to get on the Corn Ferry events and Monday qualifiers and stuff like that. So, I mean, it just kind of, it might seem like a drastic jump, but hey, you know, when you have all those things put in perspective of what's the worst thing that can happen if I don't make it to the PGA Tour? Well, I still have a great life. I have a wife, little puppy that we just got a couple months ago. My mom and dad still love me. My brother still loves me. I still have tons of friends. So in the grand scheme of things, why not give it a try and do it while I still can?
I mean, that's just incredible. Your entire journey to get to where you are right now, and all the adversity that you've had to gone through. And you just, what I love is that you focused on the things that you mean the most to you and care about you. And I think we interviewed Brewer Hicklin once, and he talked about, like, he used to have the same thing. He'd get wrapped up in his performances, and then he just went back to, at the end of the day, the people that are around you still love you, no matter how you perform on or off the field. It seems like you've taken that mindset into golf too. You're like, no matter how I do on the course, doesn't matter. I get to go out, have fun. I come home, and everybody who loves me is around me. But I'll kick it off to Caleb if he's got a first question.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a heavy story. It sounds like a E60 in the making. One of the things I just want to kind of recap here is a lot of things that we do when we talk to athletes about transition. It doesn't matter the sport, really. And in your case, obviously it doesn't, is blending your past, your present, and your future. And you literally just gave us all of that in that story. So just the fact that you can articulate and say that in a digestible form, and I mean that with the nicest way possible, it's just a beautiful thing. One of the things I want to go back to, and I don't want to, cut Jared off if he has any further thoughts or, maybe even background thoughts, but from 2017 to 2018, you got released and you found out you had a form of leukemia, right? Cancer. Can you talk to us about, I mean, that's a year or two, depending on when these things happen, but can you talk to us about going through that release to finding that out? I mean, you just kind of said it like it was, another chapter in your book, but that's not an easy chapter to read.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, yeah, I think that's kind of why, like I said, it's been 4 years. So obviously I've had a lot of time to digest it, and I've gone and I've spoken a little bit to high school kids and other stuff, and done some work with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, kind of talking about that. So I think that's kind of helped me, like you said, be able to, translate it to a more digestible form, give it to someone that, I hope that no one really understands what I talk about when I say I get those feelings. I hope that they don't, but I also want people to kind of understand what it's like, without having to go through it, so that they can start to understand, you give up a walk-off home run and you blow a save. It's not the end of your life, man. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
It sucks and you're going to work hard, but it's not, because I've been there too. But yeah, from 2017 to 2018, it was a rough, because I think it was just about eight months, from my release to my actual diagnosis.
Wow.
And so when I got diagnosed, the type that I have, it's rare for a 25-year-old healthy professional athlete to get. 90% of the people that get it are 65 or older. And so I'm still kind of a case study at Huntsman Cancer Institute right now for, kind of the length that you're able to live and survive with it, and some different trials and stuff like that they like seeing on me, just because I'm one of the only ones that's young enough with this specific type. And, I think one of the toughest things for me was I actually was sick and I had this leukemia for about a year and a half or 2 years before I was diagnosed with it. So while I was playing and I saw my performance go down in professional baseball, I was working out harder than ever, hired Eric Cressy and a whole bunch of great staff around me to make sure I was physically fit, and my velocity was still going down. I was eating better and my velocity was still going down, performance down. Like I said, that just kind of started the mental spiral of, what's wrong with me? Why am I doing this? I put in the work in college and saw the benefits of the velo go up and the performance, and now I'm taking it to the next level and it's still going down. I didn't understand. And so in one way, it kind of gave me closure as to why those things were happening. But at the same time, like I said, I mean, that diagnosis of it and not knowing if the treatment's going to work, not knowing how long you have to live after, because they can't give you an exact reason. Like I said, it just really puts everything into perspective, and I had to take a step back and lean on a lot of stuff that I learned from baseball and from sports. Kind of like we said, if I came in to close a game and I gave up a first pitch home run to the first guy and we were winning by 2, I can't just cave in and be like, oh man, my first pitch just got tanked over the wall, because we still have a 1-run lead. I got to close the deal still.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how I viewed this was, I just got hit with this leukemia cancer diagnosis at a young age with no real reason of having it, no family history or genetics or anything, just kind of a bad first pitch, I guess you could say. And I kind of just focused on, okay, well, what do I do from right now? I can't focus on, why did this happen to me? Why do I have it? Because I already have it. I already gave up that home run. So how do I get the next pitch over the plate to not give up another home run? And that's kind of, like I said, how I started relating the adversities that I took on a smaller scale in sports and baseball and related it to a much bigger thing in life.
Yeah, closer mentality. So let's go off of that. One of my next questions was actually going to be, could they tell you, and you answered this, but could they tell you when maybe you started having this, or maybe you started showing symptoms that you had to get tested? But you kind of answered that. What I was curious is, when the Astros released you, did they say anything in particular that made you, pop in your head, I'm not myself, I'm not as healthy, I don't know what's going on, then you had to go get some tests done, and that's kind of where this came up?
No, that's kind of one of the things, like I said, that actually worked against me, being so healthy and working out so hard and taking care of myself so well, is the blood test results I did in spring training didn't show any abnormal white blood cell counts, which is leukemia. It's white blood cell count. They were a little elevated, but it wasn't enough to be like, oh, that's not a cold or a flu or something like that. And so there was no real signs of that until, and the reason why was because my body was really healthy and it was fighting really well for a long time. Most people, like I said, within 6 months, you would get sick enough to know that, okay, now I'm really sick, something's really wrong. And it took a little over a year and a half for my body to finally be like, okay, we can't fight this anymore. So that was kind of it. Like I said, I didn't know until I was playing tennis one day just for fun at the tennis facility after I got done working my little part-time shift, and I had a little blind spot in one of my eyes come up. The ball, I was tracking the ball coming towards me, and all of a sudden it kind of strobed out and I couldn't see it. And so I went to the eye doctor, and he saw that in the back of my eye there, I started to have a little bit of blood, and that's kind of what visually impaired me. And so actually my eye doctor, without scaring me too much, he kind of had an idea that that was something that was going on, because I didn't have diabetes or any of these other blood things. And so he sent me to my general physician, which is a good family friend that I had growing up. And when we did the blood test there, that's when he called me and was like, dude, how are you feeling? You shouldn't be able to play tennis. You shouldn't be able to work out and do all this stuff you're saying you're doing. so we need to figure out what's going on. And we did one more blood test, and that's kind of when, you know, fire alarms and red alerts started going out. And I went straight to Huntsman Cancer Institute, did some more bone marrow biopsies and a whole bunch of other tests. And I started chemo basically within 24 hours of, you know, having all that stuff kind of go right there. So I didn't have time to react other than the way that I knew how, like I said, in a closer mentality of next pitch, next step.
Yeah.
In a way, you're lucky that it didn't happen on the baseball diamond. Like,
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
all right, I want to throw one more thing, and then I'll kick it back to you, Jared. One of my favorite parts about this story, because there's a lot of down parts, but the positive thing is here when you said, I knew being an athlete, I had to be active. I want you to kind of walk us through that thought process, because I highly doubt that was just one thing you're laying in your bed. You're like, I have to be active, right? Like, and just have to go after it. A lot of athletes might think differently. They might take, you know, I was this baseball player, I was this kind of physical, I need to compete. And what competing means is different than being active. But that being active thing came with a solution, right? I don't know what that process was for you to find golf. I don't know if you could have said, I'm going to be active and I'm going to go play Frisbee, or I'm going to do, you know, I don't know, surfing or something like that. I know your physicality came into it, but what was that process of you going from, I need to be active, to golf? And then to recap this question, this is a similar question I asked to Tyson Ross. Do you see similarities in pitching and playing golf?
Yeah. So we'll start with the active part of that question. You know, the first week when I was doing a bunch of bone marrow biopsies where they dig into your pelvis and take pieces of your bone, and it's a pretty intrusive process. And so you get really sore. I couldn't walk for the first few days, and then the chemo starts hitting, you get tired. It took about 5 days, I think, of me just sitting, watching TV all day, every day. I couldn't even go lay down in bed. I had to just sit in a chair because my back was hurting so bad. And I looked over at my wife while she came home from school one day, and I was just like, I need to go on a walk. And she knows how much, because I was always active as far as working out and stuff. So whenever she wanted to go on a walk, I was already done with my workout. I didn't want to go on a walk. So when I told her I wanted just to go on a walk around the block, she was like, well, okay, something's changing here. And I think that was kind of just the start. Was I just literally walked to the end of the street and walked back with her. And as much as it sucked doing it while I was sore and doing the actual walking, when I got back, that's when I kind of started to flip that switch in my brain. Like, I just got to get up and do it, because I felt so much better for the next few hours. And it wasn't even just physically, just mentally. I was like, you know, I got the sunlight, I got fresh air. I wasn't in a dark basement apartment, kind of just sulking in how crappy I was feeling the whole time. And so that was kind of the active part, was just, okay, what do I do to go outside? What can I do? Can I play Frisbee? Can I play golf? What should I do? Transitioning into the golf was kind of easy. My dad is a big time golfer. I remember he was a big amateur golfer in the state of Nevada. He's won tons of tournaments and stuff like that. But when I was a kid, you know, it was like, oh, that's an old man sport. I don't know. And, you know, my dad got another trophy. That's cool. I don't know what that means. And so I kind of started with that. He took me out a couple times. I played once in spring training that last year in 2017 with some roommates. And then, like I said, that first time that I went out after my diagnosis and actually got out there, and it was just me and my wife, and we were just having fun. She didn't even play. She just rode around with me. Fresh cut grass and the air and everything else, just being out by yourself. I mean, that's what started the fall in love with it, after kind of just getting that active part of my body getting going.
So the second part was that pitching, but I can't leave that one out. How do you see pitching? Because, you know, there is obviously the obvious pitching in play there, but do you see similarities between pitching and playing golf?
Absolutely. I always tell people one of the biggest similarities that I found was, you know, there's no shot clock in either sport. And I was, as a closer, I tell people all the time, I could be 0-2, 2 outs with nobody on base, and then I could walk the next 3 guys, and all of a sudden it's red alert, it's crazy pressure, crazy adrenaline, everything out on the baseball field, right? You could give up a couple of errors, you could do things that are out of your control, and you could still be pitching well. It's the same thing in golf. I could hit a drive right down the middle of the fairway, but it could hit a sprinkler and bounce off out of bounds. You have no control over that stuff. So I see a lot of similarities in, not being so outcome oriented, being very process oriented. The only thing I could control pitching was how my delivery and my release of the ball was going. Once I let go, I had no control over if Aaron Judge hit a home run off of me, or I had no control if he swung and missed. It's the same thing in golf. I have control over my setup, my swing, but the second that ball leaves the club face, if it's slicing to the right out of bounds, it's going out of bounds, man. Like I have no control halfway there. And that's kind of the biggest thing is being more process oriented and set up and being able to prepare yourself for success, but not being so wrapped up in the outcome.
I always thought pitching and golf were similar because you repeat the delivery or you repeat the motion, and then you have these clubs that act as your pitches almost. So you have your driver, like it's like the same thing. But I once said this to I'm not going to say his name, 20-game winner in major leagues. As I was in a foursome with him, and he was our third and fourth person because the fourth person had like some illness and couldn't show up. So he was like, I'll shoot one and then I'll hit another one because I'll act like that person. And he would correct it on the fourth. So like the fourth person, he would correct that one. And I was like, is this like pitching? And he was like, no, it's nothing like it. And I was like, I'm going to shut up now. So I wanted to hear your thoughts because it's very interesting to me because I think that you have to repeat the delivery, just like you have to repeat the swing. It has to almost, if you have it a little bit different, your landing foot's different, your hips are different. I mean, the ball is just going to go a different place. So I had to ask that question.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the one thing I really love is all the lessons and learned that you've taken from each experience that you've had in life, whether it's good or bad, and you kind of just haven't let it change the outlook of the person that you are. You've let them help you grow. And the one thing that I also wanted to come back to as well is that even through all the adversity, you still found ways to give back to your community. And well, the one thing that you have is the Adam Whitt Foundation. And I'd love for you to kind of touch on that, describe what you're doing with all of that and how you're just working even through all that you're going through to give back to the communities.
Yeah. So that was another thing that kind of, I've always donated time and done stuff, charity work and stuff going through, in college, we would do stuff as a team or I would do stuff individually, just with my family and stuff like that. So it's always been something that we've thought about and I've thought about. I never necessarily thought that I wanted to start my own nonprofit foundation. But along with the golf and everything else kind of coming up, one of the things that translated really well was my speed and power to golf. The way that I pitched in a sidearm submarine delivery is very similar to my golf movement, my golf swing. And so I have one of the farthest drives, or I have the farthest drive in the state of Utah, I guess right now. It's 435 yards. Wow. And so I kind of started out with some long drive experimentation before I turned pro. And then COVID hit and it kind of derailed a lot of that stuff. So I just decided to join the PGA and go that route. But one of my cousins, he asked me to do an event. He was hosting a golf event and wanted me to come do a long drive thing. And kind of as we were setting it up, we started to realize, we were thinking, we could raise $1,000 or $500 or something. And we started looking at, we were like, dude, this is going to be kind of a lot more than just $1,000. It's going to be 10, 15,000 that we can raise. And I didn't feel comfortable with just taking all of that money myself necessarily, getting paid that much for something like that. And so my cousin, my wife, my mom, and I kind of spitballed an idea of running a golf tournament, an Adam Whitt Foundation golf tournament. Well, where does the money go from that? It needs a place to go. And so that's how we started the nonprofit, was one golf tournament, one event. And we ended up raising just over $35,000 in our first golf tournament. And so we were able to kind of start giving back, and we needed direction for what the nonprofit's going to do. It would be easy to do cancer research, or it would be easy to do something like that. But in Northern Nevada, Carson City, Reno, Lake Tahoe area where I'm from, I saw a lot of my friends who started playing sports with me young, and then maybe in high school, both their parents worked and they couldn't get a ride to football practice, so they stopped playing. Or maybe they stopped playing baseball because they couldn't afford the Spirit Pack to buy their uniforms or whatever it was, whether it was $100 or $200. They couldn't afford their cleats, so they stopped playing. every single one of those kids just about started drinking, started getting into drugs earlier, started missing classes, started doing things outside just because they didn't have that structure and that place to go to keep them kind of busy and kind of honest when their parents were out working. And so that's kind of where the foundation stemmed from, how we got it going and what we do. We help underserved and underprivileged youth athletes in Northern Nevada right now, with that Spirit Pack money, with buying cleats, with buying soccer nets, with whatever it is. We just donated $3,000 to the Carson High School soccer team because they didn't have any nets on the soccer field. You know, they would hit a soccer ball and it would just keep rolling through the goal until it stopped rolling. They'd have to chase it down. You know, the kids have worn jerseys that have holes in them from 2005. So we bought brand new jerseys for them. There's a kid in Sparks. His mom wasn't able to afford travel baseball from April through July. You know, it was about $1,500 with all the travel and hotels and all that stuff. And so she told him that he couldn't do it this year, and we were able to step in and give her that $1,500 and help him do it. And he ended up pitching a no-hitter in the third tournament that he played in. You know, so just stuff like that, allowing them to be able to do it. But at the core root, because of my experiences, I know how important the things that I've learned and the way I've tackled my cancer diagnosis and my golf career is all because of the things I've learned, like I said, from baseball, from leading a baseball team, from being part of a team, from not having a good game, from not having a good season, to being successful, getting drafted. All of those things, I learned it from those experiences through team sports. And so I just, even if a kid doesn't want to go play in college or doesn't want it, I just want that kid to still be successful in life and whatever else they want to do, and not get sucked up into drugs or alcohol or anything else that can take away from that too early on in their life. So we're just trying to break down that financial barrier just to make sure there's no reason a kid can't play a sport, whether it's frisbee golf or it's football or cheerleading or something like that. It can be any sport, but that's kind of what we do at the Adam Whitt Foundation. And we're going to start trying to expand it to here in Salt Lake, where I'm living now. My parents and my brother and family still live in Reno, and I go back all the time there. But we're trying to keep expanding it and keep growing.
That's awesome. And I think the one thing we've actually talked about this with Tyson Ross, he started a Loyal to My Soil program where he does free baseball camps, but you're providing an opportunity to a lot of kids who might not have the opportunity to play a sport or experience it. And a lot of times you can't actually find out what your passions are unless you can experience things. And so having that opportunity is just awesome to see you do that. I'll kick it off to Caleb for the last question if he wants to dive right into one.
Well, I think we'll end with your normal last question.
Okay.
And I'll just give one. I mean, Adam, listening to your story, it's truly inspiring, and just your articulation of, you know, what you went through, what you experienced, and then bringing it forward. One of the things I want to just know from, you know, talking to you and listening to your story is what interest has maintained throughout. So obviously the being active thing, you know, is a part of who you are, your identity, it's in the fabric, but what interest from baseball to really, I want to say being active, to golf, and then to doing this foundation, what has, you know, maintained throughout?
I think it's just something that I kind of developed early on, and I never really was able to, like you said, articulate it or pinpoint it. But I mean, when I look back at my life, whether it's second grade reading or it's been soccer practice or baseball or whatever, I always want to do the best I can to make sure that when I'm done, it's just like with baseball. Sure, it didn't end how I wanted. You know, I wanted to be a 10-year major league veteran and be an all-star and do all that stuff, but there was other plans and obstacles in front of me. But when I look back, people are like, oh man, it must have been so hard to have it taken away because of health and cancer. It's out of your control. Well, I did everything that I could while I could. You know, I have no regrets about it. You know, I wasn't even supposed to make the college baseball team. I walked on and had to redshirt my freshman year and still had to try out with a new coach my next year and had to earn my way onto that. And so just being part of the college team was a success. Then to get drafted and play in Cape Cod and be an all-star there and everything else. And it was all from whatever I do, like I said, whether it's schoolwork or it's the nonprofit or it's golf, I'm constantly trying my best. whatever that best is. If it's like this morning, I did not want to wake up and work out before this podcast. I wanted to work out this afternoon, but I don't have time this afternoon. So what did I do? I woke up and I worked out before the podcast. It's just that's one thing I think, and it came from my parents, definitely. They wanted to make sure, even if it was cooking class in middle school, I was going to try, and I was going to try to cook as best as I could, even if I'm not a chef. I'm going to try my best, and that's kind of the one thing that stuck with me throughout everything, and I think is almost more of a mental decision than anything else, is just making sure that I try and I give it my all.
Yeah, and I absolutely love that. And I think you kind of touched on the last question a little bit in your response there. But if you had just kind of one piece of advice, and this is the question we ask all our guests, what would it be for future athletes who are in the minor leagues trying to make that transition to the next stage in life or in college, and they're not going to make it to the pro level? Like, what would be your one piece of advice for them to kind of take away?
It's natural to kind of feel scared or worried or not really feel your worth anymore. I think a lot of us get that worth, like I said, wrapped up and intertwined with our performance or what we do. And it can be any profession. My wife's a pharmacist, and for a long time when she was in pharmacy school, it was kind of the same for her. She had to be a pharmacist. She that's all everyone asked about. That's all they want to know. How is it getting your doctorate of pharmacy? Well, once she got it, she realized she didn't really feel any different. When I got drafted, I didn't feel any different. I was still Adam Whitt. It wasn't Adam Whitt, the baseball player. That's just how I realized it. And so when you're in that transition period, it's a little scary. It's a little tough not knowing or not feeling like you have another passion or something out there. But keep trying, keep communicating, and just putting yourself out there. A lot of things that I learned, and a lot of important people in my life now were random pairings that I got paired up at golf with. And after 18 holes, they learned a little bit of my story, or they wanted to see more of this. And now, like I said, they're my best friends. They're employers. They're people I can lean on, ask questions. They help me as much as I help them. And so it's just, don't cut anything out. Whether, like I said, you go to dinner and the waiter's there, maybe that waiter has an opportunity for you or can point you in the right direction, and you have no idea what it is. So just keeping an open mind and not allowing yourself to kind of sink into that depression or that kind of woe is me feeling. Just keep on going. Something will figure it out, and you'll figure it out.
Yeah, I love it, and it's just kind of something we've talked about on other podcasts, and just this importance of relationships. Adam, your story is incredible. We can't thank you enough for joining us. I mean, and taking the time, and even doing that workout, and coming after that workout and joining us. So we really
truly
appreciate
inspiring.
Thank you.
435. That's the drive.
435. That's my longest one. Yep.
That's
Have you topped it at all? Or you tried to top it?
Well, so it was 427 for about a year. And 3 weeks ago, I finally got 435. So I think that's kind of one of the things I'm doing now, is I'm taking my golf just about as serious as baseball. I just hired
that's incredible.
A trainer for this off season this winter, and so that's what I'm starting right now. The last 2 weeks, I started my off season workouts, and so that's the goal. I want to get 450 plus for the next year. So it's still going up.
I'd love to know if that's the farthest for a former baseball player, because I've seen some former baseball players drive it, but that might be it. But that's truly beyond baseball. I mean, it's just, you took us to golf, you took us to the green.
Yeah, that's right. All around, baby.
Yeah, we're wishing you the best, man. And thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. It was great meeting you.